Hello, fellow risk takers, and welcome to my worst investment ever. Stories of loss to keep you winning. In our community, we know that to win in investing, you must take risk, but to win big, you've got to reduce it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm on a mission to help 1 million people reduce risk in their lives. To join me, go to myworstinvestmentever.com and sign up for the free weekly Become a Better Investor newsletter where I share how to reduce risk and create, grow, and protect your wealth. Fellow risk takers, this is your worst podcast host, Andrew Stotz from A Stotz Academy, and I'm here with Brett Martin. Brett, are you ready to join the mission?
I'm ready to join, baby. Let's go.
I can't wait to introduce you to the audience because you put in this kind of strange last sentence to your bio. And so here's Brett. Brett Martin is a co-founder of Kumospace, the virtual headquarters for remote teams, and Charge Ventures, a pre-seed venture capital fund based in Brooklyn, New York. He also serves as adjunct professor at Columbia Business School, where he teaches data analytics. And ladies and gentlemen, he loves you. Brett, take a minute and tell us about the unique value that you are bringing to this wonderful world.
All true, Andrew. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thought a lot about risk. I probably have more of an appetite for it than most, as I spent all day icing both of my shoulders from respective snowboarding and surfing injuries. But yeah, I as an entrepreneur, I love to build products that help connect people. I've built products that have connected millions of people multiple times, launched 3 products used by tens of millions of people. And as a venture capitalist, I think about sort of early stage venture capitalist. I guess I think about what it takes to de-risk the business all day, every day. And I had at least 5 conversations with portfolio CEOs today about how they're removing risk from their business. So quite familiar with it. I've been on both sides of it.
And tell us about what you're doing with Kumospace. And one of the questions also is if, why not just focus on, VC, why do you still find the desire to build as opposed to, let's say, some people are like, oh, I'm tired of that. I just want to, invest.
Well, yeah, it's funny because I think investing is often seen as so glamorous, and a lot of people that are building are looking at investors and are envious of it. But venture capital is a privileged job. What do? I sit on a pile of money. I meet really interesting people, hardworking people all day, every day. I pick a few that I really like, and they pick me, and then I give them money, and then we try to get rich together. I mean, it's kind of a dream job. There's no doubt about it. That said, personally, I love to build. I love the look that when I put a product that I built and helped build in someone's hands, and they have that moment of delight and excitement, and they can accomplish something they could never do before. Or in this case, they use it to connect with another human, use technology to connect with human in a more authentic way. That is what really drives me. And so I was investing out of Charge Ventures, my current fund, for 7 years when I saw a great business with lots of revenue growing really fast, was really high margins, that was defensible with an amazing management team. The easiest thing to do is just give them money and then sit back and wait for your check. But when I saw Kumospace, this new form of interaction, a more human, authentic way of interacting with groups of people online, I said, I'm getting back into the arena. And, I said, I can't help but build this. And I think that's really should be anyone's criteria for starting a business, is if you literally can't imagine yourself doing anything else.
And I'm at the website of Kumospace, and it tries to identify the pain. And so I'm going to go through it briefly just for the audience so you understand what Brett's doing. But it says, is your team feeling disconnected and siloed? Say goodbye to unproductive and morale-draining video calls with virtual office that brings your team together. Get answers and alignment instantly. Try it for free. So just tell us a little bit more about what you're delivering through Kumospace, and maybe for the listeners, how they could, check it out. Maybe they can go to the website and learn more, but tell us about the mission you're on there.
Yeah, our mission is to take the millions of people that are working for remotely or for hybrid teams or distributed teams and give them a place to show up and do great work together every day. In the same way that, an office, a physical office, it's not just for a place to do work. It's a place to build relationships with your coworkers. It's a place to goof off. It's a place to have lunch. It's a place to, watch presentations, to have events, right? It serves all. It's a place to keep your files and your information, and it's a place to impress customers and show off your company culture and personality. And so we feel like we lost a lot of that when when we moved to working from our desk at home. I mean, Zoom and Slack are incredibly productive, but they don't do a lot of the things I just described. And so we felt like there was a place for a new type of tool where you could be online with, your 20 other people at your company or 2,000 other people at your company and really feel their presence, know that they're there, feel like there was people working alongside you, and actually go over and tap them on the shoulder if you needed help, or if you needed to get unblocked, or if you just wanted to goof off a little bit, or if you wanted to introduce yourself to a new person who joined the team. So that's the mission of Kumospace. Just give all the remote workers the same kind of positive experience that you might have in an office.
And it, for a lot of traditional people, what they've done is said, as soon as the pandemic's over, let's get back to the office. But that's not going to be the case for a lot of people, right? Where I think about one of my business, I do so much online, and I have a course called Evaluation Masterclass Bootcamp. And basically, I also hire my students and others that are great. And so I've got a guy that's was a student. He lives in Egypt, and he's just passionate about bringing the student experience through the boot camp. And so I hired him, and well, we use all the tools, we use Zoom and we use Slack and we do all that stuff. But if I create, let's say, the virtual office type of thing, and virtual events and all that, what would you say is, the thing that we're going to notice that wasn't delivered through Zoom or Slack or whatever?
Well, I can answer that with an anecdote. So when we launched Kumospace, it was initially because I used to run an angel investing event and for my fund, and it was bringing 50 sort of middle-aged farts like myself together, and we would share deals, and it was a great source of deal flow for my fund. Pandemic hit, and everyone said, "Why don't you bring this online?" And I said, who wants to hear me give a PowerPoint presentation to 50 of my friends every month? And so, we realized there was a gap in the market. There wasn't a really good place to bring groups of people online where they could connect in small groups and move fluidly between small groups. And we launched Kumospace. We didn't really know what people were going to use it for, but we knew it was better for that. And we had millions of people use it. We had them use it for weddings, for funerals, for graduations, as virtual offices, for events. And we eventually, we were trying to decide, okay, which direction do we want to go in? And so we still believe in face-to-face. We think there's a huge value in face-to-face. We actually have quarterly offsites where we bring our team together from all over the world to connect in person. It's great to build rapport, right? But we just think it's inverted. We think you should spend most of your time, remote, wherever you want, without all the friction of being going to the office, and then occasionally come together. So anyway, we're about to have our first in-person offsite. We're so excited. And then Omicron hits, and half our team gets sick, and we have to cancel the offsite. Now, luckily, we were in a very good position to throw a virtual offsite, and so we pivoted on a dime. We threw a virtual offsite in our own virtual environments, and we sent out a survey to our team, and we said, what are your favorite things about working at Kumospace? They said, we love shipping products, we love working hard, we love getting good work done, and we love the flexibility of remote work. We'd love to be able to do work from anywhere in the world, not have to commute, etc. So what do we hate about working at Kumospace? And our team we have a whole radical candor thing, and they said, we hate cross-departmental communication. It's really hard to get aligned with people sometimes, and you know what? We don't feel like we have as strong bonds with our team as we would have if we were working in person. And we said, holy crap, We have the same problems as every remote work, or every fully remote company in the
Totally
world.
true.
We weren't using our company Kumospace as an office, and we said we need to dog food our own product. We need to live in this thing all day, and so we pivoted into being a virtual office. That was about a year and a half ago, and it's completely changed the way we do business. Like the team morale is up, the less miscommunication, people are brought up to speed faster, better onboarding, and so it really just started with our own experience.
Well, it's fascinating to learn about, and I've got the site up on mine. I'm going to set up a space myself, and I see that it's pretty simple to set up a free space. So for the listeners out there, if you're facing some of these challenges, check it out. And this is what I love about podcasting, is to get people like yourself that are trying to solve problems, on there. So I appreciate you, sharing about it. And why do you add "he loves you" at the end of your bio?
Yeah, it's hard to take a lot of work too seriously. I feel like LinkedIn is just like a total cringe zone of people taking everything too seriously. And, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
I love people. I love connecting with people. I love spending time with people. And, that's the vibe of Kumospace. And so why not put it in the bio?
It's great. Love it. Well, I love you, and our audience loves. So let's share that love. And now it's time to share your worst investment ever. And since no one goes into their worst investment thinking it will be, tell us a bit about the circumstances leading up to it, and then tell us your story.
I had just come off my first failed startup. I moved back to New York City. I needed a job. I got connected through my friend. He got me a job at a new, early stage venture capital fund. This is around 2009. And I was, looking at deals, making investments. Everything was great. And then the owners of the fund said, you know what? We actually want to turn this into a venture studio. We're going to build companies, not invest in them. And I said, all right, well, I want to start my own company. So that's fine. And I might as well do it with you guys. You're already here. And at the time I was 26, didn't know any better. I got a pretty bad deal on ownership. I think I never owned more than 20% of the company that I was founding, which, it sounds insane today, but back then, and 15 years ago, honestly, it was all over the place, and incubators were getting away with, silly stuff like that. And in my head, I said, it's not about money, it's about control. Or I said it, I said, I don't care about money. And then, but what I realized was, yeah, you're right. Money didn't matter. What really mattered was control. And so we take this deal. I start this company. I take investment. So I got, I took 150K for giving up 80% of my company, which is a pretty bad deal for your audience, probably chuckling. And so I took that and I got the company up and running, and I built a proof of concept, and I went down to South by Southwest, which is funny because I'm actually going down there this year, 2023, if anyone's around. And I barged my way into a pitch meeting, and I cut to the front of the line like any self-respecting entrepreneur. I pitched some venture capitalists that were down there. And, when a VC does a thing at a big event like that, they actually don't plan on doing deals. It's really just marketing. Anyway, I pitched my startup, and these guys go, "This is pretty interesting. We should actually talk to you." So I have another meeting with them the next day. And next thing I know, I've raised another $1 million, and I'm off to the races. We launched this thing. We're on the cover of. We had 300 press mentions in 6 months, in the Times, and all sorts of fancy things. The TechCrunch Disrupt we launched. Anyway, center of the universe for about 15 minutes. Our whole space freezes over like the ninth circle of hell. We go to South by Southwest the next year. Us and 30 competitors who launched in our space. They're all using the iPhones location services. Back then, the iPhone wasn't optimized. So every time any app asked for your location, they would ping the cell tower. So when you have 30 apps asking for your location all the time in the background, your battery lasts for about 10 minutes. And the press just cans us. And everything freezes over. And, at the time we had millions of users, and I wanted to keep going. I wanted to, figure out how to make it work. And I had a totally fractured investor base. Some people had put in millions of dollars and owned 10% of the company. Other people had put in a couple $100,000 and owned 60% of the company. I didn't have control. And, the whole thing blew up. And at that point I had 60, 70, $80,000 on credit cards. And I was personally supporting their credit cards. All the funding dried up, and all the investors just walked away. And so there I was, scrambling, raising $25K every 2 weeks just to keep the company afloat. I did that for 6 months until I finally got someone else that was willing to recapitalize the company and start the whole thing again. And all I needed to do was get my investors to agree to that deal, and they wouldn't take it. And I spent a month doing it. The whole thing blew up. I lost all my money. Everyone who invested lost all of their money. And it was an investment that was worse than a zero, because I also wasted 3 years of my life doing it, although I wouldn't consider it a waste. But that was a pretty bad investment, I'm not gonna lie.
Wow. And how would you summarize the lessons that you learned?
Oh, there's so many, Andrew. But I think the probably most important one I learned was about partnership, which is if you're in a partnership that's not working, you have to push it to conclusion. So you either have to accept it how it is, you have to change it and make it work, or you have to part ways. But the absolute thing you cannot do is complain about it and, stay in the middle ground and where, not draw it to a resolution, right? So that's the worst thing. The worst thing is to be in an unhappy marriage but not doing anything about it. And so, nowadays I try to recognize when I am complaining, one of my favorite quotes is, a man can fail many times, but he isn't a failure until he starts to blame someone else. And that was the key learning. I realized I was complaining about other people, complaining about my partners, complaining about the deal I took, which I took, by the way, instead of just, taking action, accepting it how it was, fixing the situation and moving forward. And frankly, I didn't learn it fully then. I had to go through a similar situation again where I finally got through it. But that was the most important lesson. So that would be my encouragement for everyone who's thinking about a partnership, is or who's in an unhappy marriage, a business marriage, is that make it happy, or let them to live with it, or get out.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe I'll share a couple things I took away. I was just taking notes as you were talking, and occasionally people come and ask me for relationship advice for them. I've never been married and never really had a super long-term relationship. I hope that this will be the year that changes, but I have a pretty good logical structure in my brain. So I always tell those people, I said, well, since you've come and asked me, I said, I'll give you, I'll try to help. So I'd always say, I'm just going to ask you one question. I'd like you to answer it yes or no. And that question will give you the answer to your question about your relationship. And then I really don't have anything else to say. And so my one question is, you've been together, let's say, with this person for a couple of years. You know them very well now. You didn't know them well in the beginning. So if you weren't in this relationship and this person walked up to you today and wanted to start this relationship, would you start it? Yes or no? And if your answer is yes, then you've got some work to do. Like you're saying, Brett, then frickin' fix it. But if your answer is no, then end it.
Yep.
And I think that's where the other thing I wrote down about what you talked about is resolve problems, stop complaining, and freaking solve it. And one of the things that's interesting about Thailand is that confrontation is not rewarded socially in Thailand. And so it's very difficult for Thai people to resolve conflicts. And therefore, in many, many business situations in Thailand, there is no resolution. And then what happens is that the company splits into fiefdoms where those people are building their politically, power within that organization to then get their supporters to oppose the other person. And they'll tear, it's just the way it happens, and it can tear an organization apart. So I've learned a lot from, confrontation. And, if you look at Thai police versus American police like rush in for confrontation. Whereas Thai police kind of like, well, they take it kind of slowly, it's just a different mentality. So the first thing I really take away is identify your problems and solve them. We're all going to be better off.
Yeah, exactly. Just acknowledge that they're there and, realize that all the complaining in the world isn't going to get you anywhere. So it's pretty simple, but it's surprising how many people let things fester.
Yep. The second thing I wrote down was about founder shareholding. So you mentioned that, the deal that you got, and I want you to help us to understand if a young founder has a good idea, they don't have much money, but they got a good idea and they're going out to raise money. What should they be expecting of how much of their company they should own versus give up to get the capital in? And of course, let's think about it as good faith actors, in this particular scenario.
Yeah, I mean, look, like every deal is a deal and there are unique circumstances, but as a pre-seed venture capitalist in New York, there's a pretty consistent band in which people raise money, and it obviously depends on the idea, and it depends on how far along it is and the traction and the founder's experience and things like that. But a pre-seed round, which is usually $1 million to $2 million, 750 to 750K to $2 million, is somewhere between a $4 to $10 million post-money valuation. So you're giving up anywhere, somewhere between 10 to 20, somewhere between 10 to 20% of your company in a pre-seed round. Yep. Seed round is $3 to $5 million in New York for a company that is really or anywhere between a 12 and $25 million post-money valuation. And so, that is somewhere between 20, around, between 15 and 25%. Those are the consistent general amounts that people will give up when they raise their first round of capital.
And as they're raising capital throughout that process, what should they expect there to be diluted down to? Obviously, they have 100% of the business when they have no capital and all that, but they're raising money. Where do they end up after a few of these rounds?
Yeah, this is where capital efficiency comes into play, right? Like, if you can, you should bootstrap your company and not take any money from venture capitalists like myself. God bless you. And there's nothing that VCs love more than companies that don't need their money. So, but I think, I can't remember, there's some stats, by the time you get to an IPO, a founder, if they have 5 to 10% of the company, they'll be, they're lucky. I think that, we plan on, somewhere between 40 to 50% dilution from the time we invest to the time we exit. So founder, add a little more on top of that.
Okay. I'm just reminded of one of my episodes, episode 192, with the guy I interview was a guy named Sampat, and he has a really interesting business, but the key thing there is that his VC money fell apart, and he realized, the title of it, I said, what we went through was the idea that basically cash flow is your ultimate source of value, and if everything else flows, falls apart, getting cash from your customer. And then I heard someone say to me recently, we're customer financed. You ever hear
AKA
that before?
revenue. That
I
sounds great.
I love that, we're customer financed. Beautiful. One
Yeah.
last question I have is about valuations. And you mentioned about the problem about having different people come in at different valuations and different shares that they're getting. How important is that as a founder is going through that process? That is there an alignment that they should be thinking about related to that, or how do they think about the valuation and the shares that they're giving up in the different rounds?
Yeah, that's what I think we can go back to the story I told, right? Which was I was not valuation sensitive. Um, so there's a lot more than valuation, right? There's actually, I think a lot of founders get hung up on the headline valuation. Oh, is my company worth, $10 million or $100 million or $1 billion? And the headline valuation is not actually the most, it's important, but it's not always the most important term. There's lots of other terms, how you're going to get paid back, or what happens in a down round situation, who has control, how many board seats do you give up. There's lots of other terms that you might be willing to take a lower headline valuation, but in return for getting some other terms. So my encouragement, that's where you really should lean on your legal counsel, who should be giving you good advice about what's the better deal from a holistic perspective.
It's also one of the other questions I have for you is about how much should a founder expect to be supported by their investor? Because I work with some different private equity guys and VC guys, and also with some startup companies. And it's often the case that there's almost very little value added by the investor. And the startup person feels like there should have been more. I'm just curious, what's your experience and how would you advise a founder who's looking at different investors and some saying, yeah, we can do this with you and we can do that, or how should they look at that?
I have a blog post that I've never published called Investors, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I don't know if it ever will get published, but I have seen that the check size is not at all correlated with the actual value add. I've had small investors that have, I've had large investors that have done nothing. I've had small investors that have done a ton, and I've had everything in between. So it's really a case by case basis, and you really got to feel people out to figure out, do you have the right vibe? I think, is this someone you want to work with? So as an investor, a really important criteria for me is this someone I want to work with for the next 10 years? I'm investing in these pre-seed companies. I have to hang out with these people for a decade, and if I don't really enjoy spending 30 minutes on the phone with them, once a week, right? I'm not going to give them my money, even if it's a great deal. Like that's not worth it. That's not worth it.
You're
And it usually
handcuffed.
just does not, it's not going to lead in the right place.
Yeah. And, I started a business, a coffee factory here in Thailand 28 years ago with my best friend, Dale, and he runs it. And, but when he calls at night at the end of his day to talk about what's going on, I love it. I just, for 30 years, and we've been friends since we were in high school, and he came to Thailand and then, said, hey, here's an opportunity. But I just really, really enjoy talking with him and working on the business with him and going through that. So that's a great, great lesson for all of us. Now, let's just go back in time and imagine that you knew all the things that you know now. Based on what you learned from this story and what you continue to learn, what's one action that you'd recommend our listeners take to avoid suffering the same fate?
It's so hackneyed. I almost don't want to say it, but at the end of the day, I just think it's all about who you work with. It's don't, and maybe the more tactical advice is, don't be short-term thinking about, you know, long-term partnerships. Don't take the deal just because it's there, or just because someone's dangling money in front of you, or just because, you know, you're pressured to work with people that you're not excited about. Always hold out for people that you are love and respect. At the end of the day, you know, a good business partnership is the same as a relationship. Is you have to like the person, you have to respect the person, and you have to trust the person. And so if nothing else matters relative to those 3 points, and those three things are absolutely necessary. So yeah, that's the short
Yep.
answer of it. You know, my co-founder of Kumospace, Yang Mao, I've worked with him now in 3 companies, and you know, same thing. You know, he's a bastard sometimes, but I love him to death, and there's no one else I'd rather work with.
Yeah, my other business, I have a Thai business partner, and he and I have worked shoulder to shoulder in the same office, in the same operation when we worked in investment banks. And then we started up our company together. And I said, at one point when our business wasn't doing that well, he said, "What's our plan B?" And I said, "There is no plan B. I want to work the rest of my life with you, doing what we like to do, and, you know, and doing it together." And that was when we really doubled down and said, how do we really build this business? So I love the focus on that. And I think that's the key. The money stuff and all of that, all those things can work out. But man, when it's not working between the chemistry and the cooperation, there's nothing there. It's gone. So what's a resource that you'd recommend? Stuff that you've done, your sites, anything like that? Feel free to share with us that, you know, can help.
Well, you know, one thing, maybe if you'll permit me a
Yep.
little um a ability to pitch something we built. So we built a thing called Stats for Startups. If you check this out, it's statsforstartups.com.
Yep.
And we basically went through the thousands of um, pitch decks that we've seen at Charge Ventures since we started 8 years ago. And we pulled out all the metrics, and we kind of built a periodic table of uh, stats. So whether that's annual contract value, or accounts payable, or ARPA, average revenue per account, right? Basically all the sort of, you know, type of stats or metrics that you might see to evaluate a startup, and we put it all in one place. So that's one place that you, as an entrepreneur, if you're trying to understand how to describe your SaaS business, and you know, your investor asks you for a cohort analysis of your users, you understand you can go to statsforstartups.com, look it up, and you know,
And is this
understand
all
what
for
they're looking
free, or
for.
are you charging for this?
This is all for free. This is just
Incredible.
something we put together for the community.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm at the site right now, Stats for Startups. I'm looking at annual contract value. It explains like what it is and information about it, and all the other items there. So this is a great stuff. So I think that's one of the best resources I've seen recommended on the show in a long time. So
Well, thank you. Thank you.
yeah,
I give a shout out to my partners, Thanos and Thomas. They put a lot of good work into this.
that's fantastic. All right, last question. Besides surfing, what's your number one goal for the next 12 months?
It's crazy. I think that there's a long-term partnership that I would like to lock down as well. I have some good, you know, partner deal I'm working on, and I feel like if I could lock it down, it's a particularly long-term one that I hope to have for the rest of my life. And so if I can get that done, that'd be great.
Sounds exciting. Well, listeners, there you have it. Another story of loss to keep you winning. Remember, I'm on a mission to help 1 million people reduce risk in their lives. And this discussion hopefully reduces risk in those listeners who are in the startup space. If you've not yet joined that mission, just go to my worstinvestmentever.com and join the free weekly Become a Better Investor newsletter to reduce risk in your life. As we conclude, Brett, I want to thank you again for joining our mission. And on behalf of A. Stotz Academy, I hereby award you alumni status for turning your worst investment ever into your best teaching moment. Do you have any parting words for the audience?
Be bold and be curious. Have fun.
And that's a wrap on another great story to help us create, grow, and protect our well fellow risk takers. Let's celebrate that today we added one more person to our mission to help 1 million people reduce risk in their lives. This is your worst podcast host, Andrew Stotz, saying, I'll see you on the upside.